But then she continues, what then came to me as a salvation turned into a nightmare. It was like a cult. There was always someone who knew more than you, who would make your life miserable by telling you what was halal or haram. When people leave Islam, whether they're born Muslims or they're just embraced the faith, it's very, very often because of pressures they experience coming from other Muslims. And this is what this article is about. So today I am reviewing a journal article from the journal Religions, which is titled, Islam is not bad, Muslims are, I am done with Islam. So it is an article published in 2021 by Alexandra Ainz-Galende and Rubén Rodríguez-Puertas from the University of Almeria in Spain. Lots of Muslims say that they don't care if people leave the faith, because for one people who leaves, there's like 10 more who embrace the faith, or some others I've heard saying that, if they leave the faith, it's their problem, they're just being weak, it's natural selection. So they don't believe in evolution, but they consider Islam a kind of social Darwinism. I've never been comfortable with this lack of rahmah from certain people in the community, because it seems people sometimes forget that reverts to Islam are one of the categories of the recipients of zakat. This is the importance they have in the faith. I don't know if they realize how serious it is that if your behavior has led someone to go away from God, because they thought this is how Islam is, because you represented the faith in the wrong manner by being abusive, mistreating people, or taking advantage of them. I don't know if they realize how serious it is that basically, if you've been abusive, you've been doing the work of the devil. So this article is about the motives of around 20 people living in the region of Granada in Spain, about the reasons why they left Islam after they've embraced it. So in terms of figures, there's exactly 19 people they have followed. And out of these 19, 13 people embraced Islam because they believed it was the truth. They read about Islam on social media or learned about Islam through other people. The 6 others embraced Islam just because it was necessary for them to marry someone. Out of all the interviewees, all of them were looking for a community group. So we hear testimonies such as, for me, at that time, Islam was a revelation. I was very sad. My grandmother had just died. She was like my mother. On top of that, I didn't have a job, so I got on the internet. One thing led to another, and I started to like what I read about Islam. I joined some Facebook groups, and later I took my shahada. But then she continues, what then came to me as a salvation turned into a nightmare. It was like a cult. There was always someone who knew more than you, who would make your life miserable by telling you what was halal or haram. So they say that most of the interviewees had a problem with the practice of Islam as depicted or as imposed or as pressured by other Muslims. So one example is, my partner was kind, loving, until he started hammering away at me with Islam. Become Muslim. The Jannah this, the Jannah that. I was foolishly in love, went and believed it. So they will relate of, quote, burden and pressure with issues related to the practice of Islam, demanding from them to be more and better. So this is something I have experienced in my own life, in my first marriage, with someone who was, I would say, very practicing in terms of rituals. So for me, it was from 0 to 100 overnight. I embraced Islam way before my marriage, and I was taking my own time. But when I got married, I had to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. I had to do all the fard, all the sunnah, all the nafil prayers. I had to do qiyam al-layl, tahajjud. Music was haram, photography was haram, video was haram. And I accept there is some school of thoughts that say that, music, photography, videos are haram, but they do not represent all the interpretations and scholarly opinions. And I can understand how, to someone who is completely new to the faith, all these rules and rituals can feel very overwhelming. It is important to take into account that at the time of the revelation, so from the moment that the Prophet ﷺ saw the angel Gabriel, and the moment where the prayer was revealed, fasting was revealed, most of the rituals we know in Islam came around 10, 11, 12 years after the first revelation. So it was around the time of the Hijrah to Medina. The first thing was about monotheism, Tawheed, there is one God, the angels, the prophets. It was about good behavior, help the poor, help those in distress. And all the rituals as we know them came after, like with the Isra wal Miraj, the prayer was revealed, we have to pray 5 times a day and so on. So people had time. Even the prohibition of alcohol was very gradual. There was a strong drinking culture, but gradually people got accustomed that no, this is not good, they need to reduce their consumption, and eventually it was prohibited. So this article omits something very important as well, is when relationships with other Muslims can be abusive, harmful, and when people experience a lack of community, which is, I understand, it is the limitation of their sample. They had 20 people and all of them had these particular stories. So this is why there's other books like Moving In and Out of Islam, edited by Karin van Nieuwkerk. And the bottom line is, a lot of these people in these research papers, they still believe that Islam is good. Islam is the truth. It has a meaning for them. But the problem is they left because of pressures, abuse, harm from other Muslims. And you may think, yeah, but you embrace Islam for God, not for people. But hold on a second. Imagine that you are someone who does not know about this distinction, Islam, Muslims, who doesn't have the time or the critical thinking to do their own research about what exactly Islam wants, go through the Quran, the Hadith, the context of the revelation, the Sirah of the Prophet, all the tafsirs, and so on and so on. And the only thing you see from Islam, what you think is Islam, is what people do. Of course, Islam is not what people do. But if the only examples of Islam you see around you are these Muslims who say, they practice everything, they pray a lot, they wear the hijab, but they harm you, like, how are you going to make the distinction? People are going to subconsciously associate Islam with these behavior. An example I have is my mom. My first marriage, so she already had a very bad idea of what Muslims, Arabs, black people are, because, well, my parents are racist, let's be honest. But me marrying someone who was Muslim, who I thought was like a really, really good person, it turned out to be very abusive, physically, emotionally, verbally. So all my mom was seeing from that person who was Muslim, wearing the hijab and praying, she would think, Islam is such a barbaric religion. It confirms everything the media says. But my mom, she grew up in a farm. She doesn't have the tools, the intellectual tools to distinguish, that what my ex-wife was doing had nothing to do with the religion. It was actually the opposite of the religion says. It was never said in Islam to mistreat your wife or your husband. And then there's some people who, when they embrace Islam, they enter a certain community. They are around a certain group of people who behave in a certain way. And so again, if they end up being traumatized by the way they have been treated, when they feel trapped in that particular setting, and when Islam is strongly associated with these people in their mind, in their life experience, for them to survive, it's just like a immediate survival reaction. I need to step away from this religion because it reminds me of all these people. It reminds me of all these bad experiences. And again, it's emotional. There is no logical reason that enters the mind when you are in survival mode. And I think we need to understand that. So people, for them, survival means leaving anything that has to do with these people, even if it means the religion, even if it doesn't make any sense, because the mind has associated bad treatment, trauma, PTSD with Islam, sadly. So I think articles like these ones are, of course, useful to understand on a sociological and psychological level what goes into people's mind, how do they build their identity, and how do they evolve. But I think from spiritual perspective, for people who attach a lot of importance to the faith and being khilafa in this word, being stewards of the word of God. I think it holds a mirror, how can our behavior drive people away from the faith? Not only that, but how it can traumatize them, do a lot of harm. As I say always, Islam is super easy, super simple, but people make it very complicated sometimes for lots of different reasons, because people don't have the best pedagogy, or because, sometimes they mix it with culture and it becomes something completely different. Here it is. I hope it was useful. Thank you very much for watching. And again, take care of yourselves and each other.